All right, so we had another crazy week, a lot of stuff to talk about. We had the announcement of a strategic Bitcoin reserve, which was the biggest news. Stock market was down big again, although we did rally on Friday, so that's good news. First things first, though, if you get value out of the video, please like, subscribe, comment, check out those links below. Very much appreciate the support. So getting right into it here, let's read the statement from David Sachs first, and then I'll give my thoughts. And this was on Thursday. Just a few minutes ago, President Trump signed an executive order to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. The reserve will be capitalized with Bitcoin owned by the federal government that was forfeited as part of criminal or civil asset forfeiture. This means it will cost nothing to taxpayers. It's estimated that the U.S. government owns about 200,000 Bitcoin. However, there has never been a complete audit. The executive order directs a full accounting of the federal government's digital asset holdings. The U.S. will not sell any Bitcoin deposited into the reserve. It will be kept as a store of value. The reserve is like a digital Fort Knox for the cryptocurrency often called digital gold. Premature sales of Bitcoin have already cost taxpayers $17 billion. Now the federal government will have a strategy to maximize its holdings. The Secretaries of Treasury and Commerce are authorized to develop budget-neutral strategies for acquiring additional Bitcoin, provided these strategies have no incremental cost to the taxpayer. In addition, the executive order establishes a U.S. digital asset stockpile consisting of digital assets other than Bitcoin forfeited in criminal or civil proceedings. The government will not acquire additional assets for the stockpile beyond those obtained from forfeiture proceedings. The purpose of the stockpile is responsible for stewardship of the government's digital assets under the Treasury Department. Promises made, promises kept. President Trump promised to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve and digital asset stockpile. The promises have been kept. The executive order underscores President Trump's commitment to making the U.S. the crypto capital of the world. So again, he basically goes on to thank them. So Bitcoin originally sold off on this news. It's since rallied, and then it's since sold off a little bit as well. The first thing I would say here is I really don't know why the market is taking this as bearish. I can understand that it isn't as bullish as what we originally hoped for, because it definitely isn't. But I have no idea why the market is taking this as bearish. Another important thing here to point out is they made it very clear. Number one, they only want to hold Bitcoin long term. They're only going to buy more Bitcoin, and they're not going to buy any altcoins. So I'm disappointed in a handful of ways. Number one, it's only 200,000 Bitcoin. Now, that's a lot of Bitcoin. Like, that is a lot of Bitcoin. But you also have to keep in mind that, MicroStrategy, for example, has 500,000 coins. So they definitely need to make this number larger. In my opinion, this comes down entirely to what else do they do? Because, and my point would be is that if they don't buy any more Bitcoin, and they don't do a 0% capital gains tax, that kind of stuff, it is definitely disappointing, because they said they're going to do more. But they definitely could be doing other things. Like, to me, holding altcoins is completely pointless. Like, all the altcoins should be sold and converted into Bitcoin. That's something that's extremely disappointing. And if they ever come across any more altcoins, those also should be sold and converted into Bitcoin. And there's also been talk of converting gold from Fort Knox into Bitcoin. To me, that's also something that should be done. Whether it's all of it, at the very least, it should be some of it. So those are things that they clearly could improve on. And they do say quite clearly that they want to develop budget-neutral ways to acquire more Bitcoin. I don't know how they're going to do that exactly. Maybe they get into the mining space. Maybe they go the MicroStrategy route of 0% loans. I don't know exactly what the plan is there. But at the very least, they need to be doing something else. So my long and short of it here is they definitely need to do something else for it to appease what they originally said, because this is pretty much the absolute bare minimum that they promised to do. an acceptable alternative would be they find a way to buy more Bitcoin, and they do keep the commitment to holding what they currently have. If they don't find a way to buy more Bitcoin, like I mentioned, the 0% capital gains tax would help out as well. But if they don't find a way to buy more Bitcoin, it's definitely disappointing because, I mean, like I said, 200,000 coins is kind of the bare minimum of what they promised. So we will see how that goes, but we are still very early here. We are still very early. Something that not a lot of people are still keeping in perspective here is that we're still not even 2 months into this new administration, and we already have this. And if someone would have told you 5 years ago, 4 years ago, even 3 years ago, that something like this would have came out, most people, even within the Bitcoin space, probably wouldn't believe you. So we do have to keep this stuff in perspective, that at the end of the day, this is still bullish. It's not as bullish as we hoped, but it is still bullish. And I do think they're going to do something else. I don't see why they would do just this and just leave it at that. Although it is disappointing that they're not doing more, because there is things that they certainly could be doing. Like an easy thing is selling the altcoins and converting them to Bitcoin. Like that's something that's very easy. And I mean, it shouldn't even be controversial, but I mean, there's still a lot of people that believe in the shit coins. So that's something that's kind of hard to keep up with. But at the end of the day, like I mentioned, it is still bullish. It definitely is still bullish. And frankly, I have no idea why Bitcoin sold off. Like, it really, really, really should not have sold off. It should have gone up quite a bit, to be honest, because this is more bullish than what the market was pricing in, 3-4 months ago when it originally came up. I mean, the Bitcoin strategic reserve was something that's only been talked about for a little bit. And I mean, a lot of people would say, "Oh, it's a buy the rumor, sell the news event," but that's how it usually goes with stocks. Bitcoin is different, and that this is why I think that the market still doesn't understand this. Bitcoin is different. It's not stocks. It's not real estate. This is something that's completely different. I mean, there's really only 1.5 to 2 million coins left. And what people don't realize is most of the people that hold the existing coins are hodlers. Like, we're talking probably 70-ish% of people that hold Bitcoin are people that have held it for years. And they're not selling, especially not at 100,000. So it's only going to be a matter of time until the price is going to have to skyrocket. And this is another important thing here as well, is that do you really think that the Americans are going to announce, hey, we're hodling all this Bitcoin and we're probably going to buy more? The country that basically every country in the world is trying to keep up with is the Americans, is the United States. So you really think that other countries aren't going to follow this? Of course, a lot of them aren't, but a lot of them are. And I mean, the ones that are the smartest are the ones that are going to do it. I mean, and the reason for that is that the people that have done it so far, the countries that have done it so far, I mean, they've been right. They've clearly been right. You look at El Salvador, you look at Bhutan, like, it's not that long of a list, but the list is going to get longer. I mean, we have the ETFs. There's an endless amount of reasons to be bullish. So I don't know why people are super bummed out about this. I'm a little bit bummed out. I'm not going to lie. I've already said that. But rather than being 10 out of 10, I've never been more bullish in my life, I'm like a 5 out of 10. I'm a 6 out of 10. 10 out of 10 means, hey, we're going to 500,000, 1 million this cycle. 5 out of 10 is, okay, maybe we go 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 this cycle. Like, I don't know why people are so bearish here. Like, it really makes no sense. So let's talk a little bit about the stock market this past week. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, we did have a pretty bad week in the stock market, and the S&P was down about 2.5% roughly. You look at the NASDAQ The NASDAQ was down a little bit more than that. Mid caps were down about the same as the S&P. Small caps were down a little bit more than that. And then you look at the Mag 7 was down more. So this was a week where the growth side of the market definitely got hit hard. And if we look at the S&P here, we're down about 6% from the high, give or take. So I've said time and time again that I expect a 10 to 20% pullback at some point this year. This looks like it very well could be it. And I think at the end of the day, it comes back to what's going to happen with this tariff thing. Because if Trump keeps talking, trying to play hardball here, that's going to hurt the stock market. Now, again, you can debate at the end of the day whether he's right or not to do the tariffs. I think that there's certainly arguments, plenty of arguments to implement the tariffs. I'm not saying he's necessarily wrong. There's definitely arguments against them as well. That's besides the point. That is irrelevant. But the one thing that certainly is true is that the tariffs definitely are, at least in the short term, because in the long term, I don't think they'll have an effect. I think it's just a temporary thing. But at least in the short term, the tariffs definitely are bearish for stocks, right? Because, I mean, number one, the thing that the stock market hates the most is uncertainty. And also, I mean, prices will go up. It's going to be harder for businesses to get stuff. Like, prices going up necessarily isn't bad for stocks, but I mean, more complicated supply chains certainly is. So as far as the stock market goes, I'm definitely concerned here. At least if I'm a short-term trader, I certainly am concerned. As a long-term investor, I really don't care, because as a long-term investor, you don't care about short-term price movements. You care about, are you buying good businesses at a fair price? That's all you care about. So all you're really doing now is keeping an eye on those watch lists. Keeping an eye on those watch lists. And the more the stock market comes down, the more likely you are to find deals. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And not to mention too, it shakes out the weak hands. So that's why people that are all bummed out about the stock market, like, hey, it's just a temporary thing. Like, it really, really is just a temporary thing. So that is my thoughts on what happened in this past week. Like I mentioned with the whole crypto or the Bitcoin strategic reserve, it certainly is a little bit disappointing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bearish, because at the very least, it's kind of at the lower end of what we expected, which should still be bullish. And as far as stocks going forward, I think there's definitely more room on the downside. But at the end of the day, Trump could come out next week and be like, hey, I've reached a deal with Canada and Mexico. We're done with the tariffs. We're opening things up. That would be bullish. We'd probably test the highs again, at least very soon. But he could come out and play hardball. So that is what is causing the concerns with the stock market. So definitely, I lean towards the bearish side. But long term, I still think we're going to be fine. Like, long term, we've always been fine. We're still going to be fine. So, like I mentioned at the start of the video, if you got value, please like, subscribe, check out those links below, and stay tuned for more.